Hello, everyone, and welcome to our chat on how we can reclaim social for good. We are one day now before Reclaim Social, the day we come together to share positive and inspiring stories on social media. And this year, I think we need it more than ever. Every time I'm talking to someone, they say, yes, I need more positive stories, and obviously including myself. So I'm very happy to welcome Seyi Akiwowo with us on our chat, one of my favorite guests to talk about Reclaim Social. Hello, Seyi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. It's my third time now.
It is. It's the first time live, though.
First time live. We might as well just start a podcast together.
I know, right? It's the thing. How are you doing? How's the pandemic finding you? Haven't talked for 6 months, so obviously always something new. More lockdowns.
Yeah, I think if we were having this conversation at the very start of January, I think I'd have been like, yeah, I'm hopeful, cautious, but hopeful, optimistic. And then we saw what happened on the 6th of January in America and Capitol Hill and the riot, and that very much speaking to this point that the online space isn't a separate public space. It's a continuum of our offline space, and how we conduct ourselves offline is going to have an impact. How we conduct ourselves online is going to have an impact offline, and vice versa. And then we saw something happen a lot closer to home with the NHS doctors talking about the increase in online abuse that they've received, and that was really heartbreaking. And I think I've been calling this the year of 2021 is the year of accountability. We really need to stop talking about the problem and now start really talking about the solution. I think everybody's very much aware of online abuse now that they've been forced to be online a lot more than they ever were before. So I'm feeling hopeful about how we can engage in systemic change around the online space and make social good an everyday conversation for everybody, but I'm not feeling so optimistic about the state of the world in other areas.
I mean, it makes sense. I will be surprised if you say that. Everything's fine, all good.
I mean, for Glitch, it's been great. We've expanded
the
team. We've got a new comms person called Alia. We've got a new amazing program manager called Gwen. So the team and our capacity is expanding to meet the needs and demands. We're recruiting for a fundraising officer. If there's anyone who's in the fundraising game, we've got a deadline there. But for Glitch, we're doing so well, but then you look out of our little mini circle and bubble that we're creating, it's not doing as great.
Yeah, of course. Would you like first, for those who might not know of Glitch and your work, would you like to do a really mini introduction to that before we jump?
Thanks. Always good to practice the elevator pitch. So Glitch is a small UK charity. We actually turned one yesterday. And we're all about making the online space safe for everybody, particularly women and girls, because they're the ones that are disproportionately impacted. And we do this through our programmatic work around resources, workshops and training. We also do this through long-term systemic change and advocating to both government and tech companies around our recommendations and solutions to making sure the online space is safe. We do also consultancy with organizations and employers who want to improve their code of conduct for their staff and their well-being, for their staff who also do public appearances, events, anything in kind of public life. So that's pretty much us in a nutshell. I like to describe Glitch as 3 mini charities, raising awareness of online abuse, tackling the long-term systematic issues, as well as delivering a meet the needs on the ground right now. 3 mini charities in one. So you get 3 in 1. You get a lot for your money when you donate to us.
I'm definitely keeping yourself busy.
Yes, very.
And obviously I love Glitch and all the work that you're doing. I'm a big advocate, and you feel like the perfect guest for Reclaim Social. And it really matches pretty much what you're saying, the work that you're doing for Glitch and what we aspire to do to continue the conversation on how we can really, as you said, be more accountable with social media. So what does Reclaim Social mean to you as a concept? How does it match to what you're working on?
Yeah, I think for me, it means about reclaiming our online spaces and first of all, understanding that therefore online spaces have been taken, have been hijacked whether that's through white supremacy, whether that's through Holocaust denials, whether that's through harassment and the radicalization of young boys to join extremist groups, whether that is incel movements, whether that is, you know, trans exclusive comments being made on the platform. We're having a real, it's first acknowledging that our space, our social media, isn't a good place. I think it's also, it's acknowledging that maybe some of the ways it's been designed and its evolution as well is perpetuating that unfairness and unsafe space, the unsafe space. But the reclaiming bit is really, for me, the exciting bit. And I think it's about how we equip people to be able to confidently navigate the online space. And that for me is digital self-care. And I'm currently writing a lot more around digital self-care, around how that is about reclaiming data privacy and around consent and around agency and confidence to engage in the online space, no matter who you are, and around how we find the balance between freedom of expression and accountability of our public figures. So accountability of football players, to your politicians, to your charity leaders, that doesn't venture into online abuse and harassment. And how do we reclaim our online space as digital citizens, and understanding that we have a duty to each other, the collective duty to each other, to make sure that the culture and the social norms that we are setting on the online space is good. And so I find that Reclaim Social, it's so simple, it's so short, but there is so much to it. There is so many steps for us to be able to really achieve that and really see what role we play in perpetuating the violence that we try and tackle online now too.
And something that they're also asking me quite a lot lately. So I'm always saying we need to reclaim social for good. And everyone is asking, okay, on a practical level, what do you really mean? So how can we encourage someone, let's say with small actions, to do something to reclaim social for good?
Yeah, so I think it's the 3 steps that I've outlined. 1, an acknowledgement that it's not good. So I think if we keep perpetuating this falsehood that the online space is neutral and it's fair and it's good, then we're setting up people to fail, and we're setting up people to be harmed when they believe that they can, I guess, access justice and, you know, navigate the online space and be fully themselves and express themselves. If we don't set people up with really understanding that we're not dealing with the safest of spaces, then we can be more aware and more attuned. So that's the first one. I think the second one is understanding where our privilege offline may extend online too. And that looks different now when you've got followers as well, but also when we know that Black women are 84% more likely to be harassed and abused online. And we know that that isn't going anywhere through our ripple effect report that we launched last year that showed that online abuse had increased during the pandemic. So there's a duty on us as allies to each other online to make sure that we're helping to report, block, support the person that's going through abuse and amplify the positive messages. So for example, you see somebody saying Black Lives Matter and you see somebody being dogpiled with all these racists saying X, Y, Z. There's a role with those who have privilege to help intercede and model better digital citizenship behavior. And I think the final thing is really understanding that we hold tech companies to account. I said 2021 is the year for tech accountability, and that starts with us. That starts with us understanding that we've got consumer power. We saw what amazing organizing happened last year in America with civil society groups and Black-led organizations calling on ad companies to disinvest or de-invest, I think the word is, from Facebook in terms of advertising. And that really made Facebook see Nike and big brands like Unilever temporarily suspend. And even here in the UK, the Labour Party temporarily suspended advertising on the platform. And I think it's really understanding that we as consumers, the way we complain, I don't know if you I'm a complainer, so I'm a proper Brit when it comes to that. Probably a Brit and a perfect mixture of being a Brit and Nigerian. I'm good at complaining. I'm good at complaining about services, and I think we need to understand that the tech companies also provide us a service too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think this year, as you said, there were many cases and issues amplified that it pretty much brings us to the next stage. Okay, what do we do about this now? And as you mentioned, I wanted to ask about the ripple effect report. It was really interesting to see pretty much their findings, actually really worrying to see the findings in terms of the rise of online abuse, especially during the pandemic and on women. So what were the biggest lessons learned, would you say, after a year pretty much in the pandemic and everything that we're experiencing in terms of our use of tech and our daily lives?
Well, I think first we need to acknowledge the digital divide. So who's not on the online space, how they can be on certain apps and platforms. And we saw that when schools had to all of a sudden be remote and kids didn't have a laptop. And that also, you know, this is the, I guess the kind of activist in me, but I think it also highlighted that we were asking kids in different year groups to have a laptop, number one, and then all be on the lessons at the same time. I don't know if you've got 3-4 kids and 4 kids, I don't know how your broadband would cope. Me and my partner William, we just got a Wi-Fi extender because the two of us couldn't be on a video call at the same time working. And then it flagged up things around overcrowding. Like there were four kids sharing a room and having to do housework. It flagged up so many issues around how the online space and the offline space are in conflict with each other and therefore exacerbating issues online and offline. I think it's really also sad that we haven't got any new legislation in place to tackle this increase of internet usage. We have the online harms bill, which has been proposed, and we've had a long-awaited announcement happen in December by government ministers, but it's still going to go through the bill cycle. It's still going to go through debates, and that means 3, 4, potentially 5 years until we have any legislation in place. And then we have to think about how people are now aware this is a law, and there's a law around what is harm, and how do we make sure that law enforcement are equipped to deal with this, and how they're making sure that they're not victim blaming people who are trying to report abuse and violence online. So that's a concern for me. I think I've got another concern around, actually, we're seeing an increase in mental health problems and ills because of the crisis. Sure. And because we don't have a public health approach to many things in the UK, but particularly online abuse, I'm worried that people who are suffering from real mental health, isolation, vulnerability, suicidal ideations are now going to be either radicalized, encouraged, duped into believing fake information, misinformation around the disease, or the pandemic, sorry, I should say, the virus and the vaccine. And I'm also really concerned that these people will end up becoming trolls, because if you look at some of the people who are trolls and who have kind of come out to say that they were a troll in the past, there were people who really suffered from a range of issues that I think the state has failed to address. So I know this is very probably activisty and a very nuanced, but I think it's just, this is the only platform I think we can have this kind of nuanced debate around what is the pandemic teaching us around reclaiming our social media and our social spaces online. I think also what we have to learn is obviously from George Floyd's murder and Black Lives Matter around what does justice look like for victims and survivors of online abuse, and how do we find the balance of finding justice. And we saw that this week with Ian Wright, former footballer. My boyfriend, I think, loves Ian Wright more than he loves me. I managed to get Ian Wright to follow him his birthday and scored great girlfriend brownie points. But we saw this week, where Ian Wright had to deal with his own trauma of being a victim and survivor of online racism, that be used against him in the court of law, and there be the most basic of consequences for this white boy who racially abused Ian Wright and sent threats. And how do we find that balance around redress and access to justice alongside a public health approach? And I think that's what we need to really be discussing as I think we're going to be in these mini lockdowns or regional lockdowns for another year and a half.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I feel like the rise of mental health concerns and pretty much how it affects everyone in different ways is something that we really don't talk enough. And I remember there was a conversation, for example, more in the charity sector with people working in comms, marketing, social media. They were saying that you can't really get away from that. And of course, you need the support. You need to be able to have someone, either a training or like someone in the team to be able to talk about that and take breaks.
Absolutely. My team will tell me that yesterday for our team stretch, we have team stretch midweek every week. We did a Bollywood like massive workout led by Kiran, our director of operations, and it was amazing. But I don't know how many organizations are able to offer that. And we work so much online, we deal with so much trauma, so very much on us to manage our self-care, and collective self-care too. And I've seen an increase in demand of our workshops around the digital self-care component of what we offer, around boundaries online, around navigating the online space and more confidently, and understanding platform settings and privacy settings, because people just don't know how to engage. And I would say if there's any like charities or employers listening onto this call, really engaging with our resources and our workshops and offers around getting your employees to feel safe online when interacting with each other. I think we shouldn't think that this bogeyman of trolling is someone outside, like, I don't know, in the States or, in across the world. Like, it could be somebody in your office. And we've had people disclose confidentially that they've been victims of online abuse from somebody in their own workplace, and there hasn't been the proper mechanisms in place to deal with it. So I think there needs to be an online version of the sexual harassment policy. There needs to be an online version of the health and safety policy, which is something that we recommended in our Ripple Effect report, which is on our website, fixtheglitch.org.
And another quite similar question that we tend to hear a lot is whether you're just working on social or it's just on your own using it. Like, how can you really protect yourself as an individual from the ugly side of social media, whether you're exposed to an attack or you see something happening? So what would be the first reactions, pretty much? What do you need to do?
I try and check in with our comms folks to make sure that they're okay. I also, as manager and CEO, try and check socials myself and check what's in the mentions as well, what's in direct messages, just so I can have oversight, and I make that part of my role as a line manager. So if you line manage somebody who manages the social media, which tends to be someone very junior, very young, I think it's really on you as having a duty of care to them as their line manager to check in with the content that they're reading. I'd also recommend Samaritans offer a really great mental health training. When our program manager is going on one around how you deal with vulnerable adults and how you deal with like vulnerable situations. So for us, it's our workshops, right? So I think that's where you can upskill yourself and have that kind of well-being champion. And I think a practical thing you can all do today is really look at filtering. If you're on Twitter, you can filter words, and I believe you can also do that on Instagram. But I would really recommend filtering keywords that you don't want to see. So it could be keywords that are around like Trump. I muted quite a lot. Here's Morgan. I've talked about muting even the Kardashians. But sometimes I also mute things that are about my work, because I want my weekend to just be where I can see Idris Elba's lovely tweets and photos without having to see other things like horrific content around Black Lives Matter or another kind of performative allyship online, which is going to irritate me. So I would really recommend looking at filtering options. And the more that we use these products on the platforms, the more it sends a signal to the tech companies that this is what we want. So this is another thing that we can do as digital citizens around reclaiming social media, by telling tech companies the kind of products we want to see, which is not just ways to make us spend money online. When Instagram changed its a whole kind of makeup, and now it's all basically shopping. It's basically an online version of eBay. That whole kind of remodeling, it would be great to see that when it comes to safety. And we have seen that with TikTok. So TikTok did announce earlier this month that they are making it default for under 18s to have certain privacy settings, so they can't have strangers just comment on their page and things like that. So I think if we can start seeing this race to safety rather than a race to the bottom of like, what can we get away with, I think that will be a real game changer too.
And speaking of the tech platforms, and as you said, being the year of accountability, what would you say be the first steps for obviously a very big conversation on all the things we need to improve?
first step, diversify your hiring.
Yeah.
Like, it will just keep being a problem if you don't have a diversity in the software engineers, in the policy and public affairs team, and in the leadership team, and in the hiring team as well, right? The second thing I would say around accountability is looking at their transparency report. So being really clear around how much illegal or harmful or violating content was taken down, and really breaking that down by what type, so we can see, like, is it online abuse, is it harassment, and then what types as well, because what are the trends saying, so we can keep ahead of the game in terms of new patterns and behaviors. I would say that all tech companies, particularly the new ones, should have a basic code of conduct that talks about a duty of care that it has to its users. So look at the new platforms like Clubhouse. As far as I understand, it's unregulated, it's unmoderated. I don't know how they'll begin to moderate audio content and how reporting structures work. And so I think we need to make sure that all tech companies have a basic policy around code of conduct online. I think we also need to see that the design of products needs to be done with safety in mind. So safety by design principle, or something that Demos has been calling for, is a gender by design principle as well. And then my very last thing on the wish list would be, when engaging with tech companies, when civil societies are engaging with tech companies, really thinking about how that labor and effort is being remunerated. And if we're going to see in the proposed legislation here in the UK around the online harms bill, where we're not going to have the ability. So for those that don't know, the online harms bill is a proposal for a new legislation around regulating harm. So what is actually seen as harmful behavior. And it's going to be massive legislation. It's really a big topic. And it looks like what it's been decided that Ofcom will be the regulator. But what it looks like is that individuals can't make complaints to this new regulator. So if you've got a concern about Twitter and it not dealing with its platform properly, there's no way to get further redress unless there's a kind of class issue or kind of systematic issue, which again, I think is problematic, but that's for a separate conversation. So if we don't have any mechanism for the everyday individual to not be able to call up Twitter and Facebook, despite the population on Facebook being 3 times that of Europe, then there's a role for civil society around the world to become this listening ear for users and a conduit of information to tech companies. And we need to really look at what that model looks like to make sure that they are being properly remunerated.
Yeah, definitely, really good points. And trying to be a little bit optimistic, or at least trying to think of more positive things, which is not always easy. Of course, we know that social media is also having a positive side, and it's really good to be able to have the channels that are giving voices to underrepresented communities, really. So what would you say would you keep from the past year in terms of any positive things, really? Even some small cases, some small wins?
I would definitely keep memes and GIFs. It's such a great way to express yourself and how you're feeling. I like this new feature on Twitter, particularly around who can you can decide who replies to you, so you can limit your replies for everyone, and I think that is really good. I would keep the ability to share videos and content from TikTok. So I'm not on TikTok because I just think I am now too old. I'm turning 30. I just think it's best to just face it that I am now getting
That's
old.
what I felt until I actually joined.
But just some of the creativity from the next generation is so cool, and it's so great to see. And I think that has been really uplifting on Twitter as well, and on Instagram. And we saw that with now Instagram doing Reels. And I think I would like to see more trending conversations that people can get behind and share things. So I think last year on the back of the murder of George Floyd, we saw a lot of institutions being more transparent and reflective. And so we saw hashtags like around how much I earn, which was around the writing industry, sharing how much they earned around their first book deal and publications and stuff like that. I think being able to demystify things so that we're equaling the level playing field is really good. And I think having only met Sir Tim Berners-Lee once in my life, but working very well with the Web Foundation, I feel like this is something that was in his heart when he set up the World Wide Web, which was about equalizing the kind of inequalities that we were seeing in society and allowing kind of small organizations to fundraise and to raise issues and to allow us to see what was happening in Nigeria and in Sudan and all of this stuff. And I think more of that conversation and trending topics will really allow us to be able to hold these really white, really male, really heteronormative institutions to account.
Yeah. And trying to look ahead, not that it's easy or anything, how would you see the future of social media, let's say in 5 years' time? I know there's no right answer, so you can say whatever you want.
Ooh. Well, I really hope that we see social media being a safe place that more people can engage in. But if you talk to people, a lot more people are saying, oh, I'm not on this platform, I'm not on that platform. And therefore we're seeing a divide where a lot of decisions are being made on these public platforms because policymakers are thinking that's where everybody is. And then there's therefore these loads of people being left behind. I would love to see in the future, in 5 years' time, the breakup of some social media companies. This might not be the most popular conversation to have, but it's definitely a conversation that is being had in Europe with the Digital Services Act, which is like the European version of the online harm bill that we have in the UK. And I think it's really scary when one person owns many, many platforms and many
for sure.
So I rejoined Fitbit. So if anyone's on Fitbit, please be my friend, because I'm always looking for challenges. And my boyfriend's really sick of me always challenging him on Fitbit. But I saw an email that Fitbit's been bought by Google. And I think it's just really scary that all of these small, really creative, innovative platforms are being bought out. And I think maybe we can learn something from Tom from MySpace. I don't know if anyone remembers Tom. He was our first friend when we joined MySpace, where he was able to set something up, it'd be really good, and then let it be brought to an end and it not be bought out by other big tech companies. I think having a monopolization of the tech market the way what we're seeing is only going to perpetuate colonialism, is only going to perpetuate patriarchy and all the other ills that we're trying to fight.
I'm actually hoping, on a similar note, that there will be more platforms that they won't be necessarily very big, but still niche and focused on what you really want. Hope so, at least.
But I also hope these smaller platforms learn that sexy is sexy, because I think what we've seen is small platforms learn that they can get away with it, right? So
true.
QAnon, we're seeing 8chan, 4chan, Reddit, etc., be really slow to the game around online safety because they're not in the media as much as Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp. But we've seen how WhatsApp can make or break an election through information, right? We've seen how people have been able to just start a clubhouse group and spread misinformation about the vaccine, or tell young girls that they should be putting things in their vaginas because that's how they're going to get men. We're seeing really dangerous things happen, and there's no way of these tech companies moderating that. So I hope that we see smaller tech companies so that we get better choice as consumers, but a race to safety, not a race to the bottom.
Yeah, definitely agree. And last question, and I see we have a couple of questions at the chat. Trying to end obviously on a positive note again, really trying, no lockdowns, no conversations of politics. What are the things that bring you hope on a personal and professional level? Or at least that's something that keeps you hopeful lately?
Do you know what keeps me hopeful at the moment? I'm reading an amazing book. Oh, and it's right here. And it's by Mia, I believe it's pronounced, or it could be Maya, apologies, Birdsong. And it's about how we show up, and it's about reclaiming family, friendship, and community, and looking at new models of community. And these are things that we can learn from kind of queer communities, Black communities, like activists, even communities where, you know, back home in Africa, and really think about what does that new model look like around accountability and around self-care and around collective kind of responsibility to each other and collective self-care. And then how do we translate that online? And that excites me. Like, what does that new model look like? What does that new framework look like? And I really hope that as Glitch grows and we can get multi-year funding, and we can continue doing amazing campaign work and continue to be a critical friend to tech companies and see through this legislation, I really hope that I can add value to talking about new ways we do community online, and what that model looks like, and what does accountability look like versus what abuse looks like.
I feel like it's a really great time with all the conversations happening for Glitch and thinking of the next steps. I'm sure it will be amazing.
I hope so.
Perfect. Let's look at the chat. There are some really good questions. So Lauren is asking, how outspoken do you think charities should be on issues that don't relate to their missions? So for example, an animal charity, how much should we be posting about issues around race? How to find a balance between public support anti-racist initiatives without tokenizing or virtue signaling?
Yeah, that's a really good question around basically you don't want to overstep, and you want to stay, but you don't want to just stay in your lane and not see what's going on in the world. And I definitely relate to that as a charity leader, like or as an emerging charity leader, and one of the only Black CEOs in the UK as well. I think we're a handful. And I saw that last year with responding to Black Lives Matter, and our response needing to be, how do we support the activists and communities that are talking about Black Lives Matter, and how can Glitch add to that? And that's why we offered free workshops and training, and we hope we can do the same with NHS doctors and nurses who are facing online abuse. We need a corporate sponsor, so if anyone there wants to help with that, please get in touch. The second thing was around understanding there was silence from the other sectors, the other charities in the sector, and getting to and using my elbow a little bit to say, hi guys, it's time for you to speak up. And that could be, doesn't necessarily mean that means doing a tokenistic statement. It could be about helping to create that space, you know, using Zoom account, for example, to help be a secretariat and carve out that conversation so charities could be talking to each other. But I would say when it comes to the issue of race and gender, they apply everywhere. So for example, the example given with the animal charity, I can definitely see a racialized lens to animal welfare, the conversations we have around veganism. I also see the kind of conversations we can have around who does the welfare of animals, where do certain practices come from. Here I would look at conversations with native indigenous communities who talk a lot about rendering to the land, being a steward of the land, looking after our animals. I think there's a lot to learn from other communities, which I think is us applying a racialized lens. I think there's also around looking into the makeup of the charity as well. So I always say to funders, you're funding the impact, and we do amazing impact, but you're also funding our alternative methodology, because the one thing we don't want to do is set ourselves up to be an organization just like the companies that we're trying to get them to do better, or trying to get them to do better. So I think there's so much when it comes to race and gender that you may not necessarily be the charity on the front line, but you can be an ally to other charities and build relationships that way, and also apply the racial gendered lens that we are freely given via Google to the work to see whose voice is being missed.
And a similar question from Jennifer: how can brands help with social justice? A lot posted about BLM, but when they get backlash, they usually just hide. So even when brands like Innocent Smoothie, they try to fight transphobic comments, they just end up with more hate.
So one of our trustees, actually, Ray Murphy, helped We Are Social with a report on Braving the Backlash, and I would massively recommend it. It talks about how brands can help model good digital citizenship online and brave the backlash when they do that. And we've seen that with Lidl when they talk about interracial relationships and diversity. We saw it over Christmas with Sainsbury's. But what we sadly didn't see, I think, I'm not a brand marketing person, but I think what we sadly didn't see was allyship between the other supermarkets. So when Sainsbury's was there, and I may have missed this. When Sainsbury's was a Target, I didn't see Waitrose or M&S or any of them show solidarity to them, and I think that's an example of showing allyship and braving the backlash. I think another thing is I find particularly frustrating is a lot of brands, and which is the work that we do at Glitch. A lot of brands will want to put diversity on their platform, on their content. So I make a joke to my boyfriend, oh, Black Lives Matter, every time we see a Black person now in an ad. It's like, oh, we've just popped out of nowhere since George Floyd, and it's so sad that it's taken the murder and the violent murder of a Black man for this to happen. But what happens after that? So we've seen incidences of where Black women have been used for certain ads and then their hair's changed, or there's been modifications made without consent of the models or the actresses, and that comes across tokenistic to me. And I think when we see dark-skinned, beautiful Black women in ads, or same-sex couples, or lone parents doing family on their own and doing it well, when there is the backlash, I don't see the brands defending those people. I don't see what risk assessment has been done to make sure that they are safe. I only see them be put on the spotlight, and I feel like sometimes that comes across quite extractive, that you kind of want to have my face on the front of a magazine or a video or whatever it is, but not actually care about my welfare if there's a backlash to it.
Yeah, that's really common. And the last question is from Khan, and it's a really interesting question. What does being a good digital citizen?
I must put this disclaimer here that I do not think that I am the model of digital citizenship. I think everyone expects that because I talk about it, therefore go to my platform and I will be it. No, I don't think so. I think you'll see a recovering dickhead really on the platform. And I think that's what I see digital citizenship it being. Well-intentioned, well thought through actions happening online, where we understand that a tweet, a retweet, a quote tweet, a meme, a GIF can have consequences. So and I think it's also about making sure as good digital citizens that we're fighting against the AI and not in our echo chambers, where we don't listen to other communities, because I think in listening to other communities, you see how much of the oppression they face. So very much making sure you're following people that you can learn from and you can support and you can retweet is important. So, for example, I follow quite a lot of African-American scholars and thought leaders, and they talked about certain memes of Black people which gets used in meme culture quite a lot, but actually what they did was show where that meme or that photo or that GIF comes from. And it comes from pain. It comes from interviews of communities after protests around Black Lives Matter. It comes from when there's been a murder or there's been an incident, and it comes from pain. And I think when I heard that from African Americans, it made me a lot more thoughtful and critical about the memes that I use, and therefore not making that popular anymore. So I think being a good digital citizen is not necessarily always being good all the time, but having a framework in which you have a bit of a checklist to make sure you're not doing harm to people. And if we all think about, let's try and do less harm and let's also resist the system, then that's going to take us into a much better place than where we are right now.
I guess it's good intentions. And what I'm usually saying when they're asking me something similar, I'm saying, just take a deep breath before you post something.
Yeah.
Whether you're angry, sad, complaining, like it's always a good idea to process it for a second. Like, yeah, I really want to say that.
Yeah, and you talk to a lot of people who've got caught out for being a troll, and they'll be like, oh, I never thought anyone was going to see it. I didn't think it was going to be this and that. And they just didn't think. And actually, if you really think about if you think about intention from an intersectional lens, like who are the different people that this could hurt? what am I reproducing? That checklist just really makes sure you're not perpetuating harm.
Perfect. You know, we could talk for hours about these things, and I promise that this time it's going to be a short interview. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us again today, Seyi. And of course, you know, we'll talk again. We'll plan the next interview. Really, thanks for being the start of ReclaimSocial. And I can't wait to see everyone joining tomorrow. And obviously continuing the conversation at the rest of the year. So how can we keep ourselves accountable? How can we all explore different ways to reclaim social for good? So thank you very much. And obviously talk soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See ya.